Good morning and welcome to Morning Movie News. Now, as I'm sure you heard, yesterday Tom Clancy tragically passed away at the very young age of 66. And he actually happens to be the second author we've lost this year who had a huge influence on Hollywood after Elmore Leonard back in August. And of course, it's sad whenever anyone passes away, but Clancy was actually on the cusp of a renaissance in Hollywood, or a potential renaissance. Now, of course, his films had done quite well, and when Harrison Ford was playing Jack Ryan, Ford made, I think, 2 films as the character. And of course, there was The Hunt for Red October, which kickstarted the whole thing with Alec Baldwin in the role. But then, Ben Affleck had tried to revive the franchise. It didn't work out. But Clancy found, a home on video games. Of course, he continued to write novels, which, is the lifeblood of his brand. But he did extremely well in the video game industry. Perhaps I think even more so than he did in film. And so well that as we see more video games being adapted to film, because I think video games have become more cinematic, so it's an easier leap for studio executives to imagine, Splinter Cell was being prepped to be a big film with perhaps the rumor is Tom Hardy starring. And of course we have the Jack Ryan second reboot coming up with Chris Pine in the lead role, which was set for a December release, but now looks like it's going to be pushed to early January, which doesn't, I think, bode well for the film. It maybe signals that it's not great. But still, I think it has a really good lineup with Chris Pine, as I said, in the lead role, Kenneth Branagh as the villain and directing, who handled Thor, and of course Kevin Costner in one of the slew of films he signed on to after his huge success with Hatfields and McCoys. So I think that we'll certainly be hearing more from Clancy. One of the great things is that when a creative individual passes away, their work lives on. But I would hate to see what happens. What typically tends to happen when someone like this passes away. There are 2 scenarios. First of all, the company that continues to handle the brand usually loses its way until they can find the right person to continue on. That's very tricky, especially when you have someone like Clancy who's been, really the figurehead, not just a figurehead, and, handling the brand creatively. You saw it happen with the Disney company. After Walt Disney passed away, they had a really hard time finding, righting the ship after that. And I think even you're seeing it recently with the Apple company, which I think has really suffered without Steve Jobs' leadership and insistence on quality and not being so much just your typical cold corporate company. So that's very interesting. The other problem is that when you no longer have someone who it's their own work, you kind of lose a little bit of your quality control. There's almost like a fire sale. Everyone's like, well, whenever he said no, now we can run in there, and the studio executives are like, we can go and get this made, and this might speed up some projects actually based off Tom Clancy work, but at the same time, hopefully, it won't hurt them in terms of quality. So we'll see what happens. We'll see if Clancy's legacy can survive. The previous work will always live on. The question is, can it continue to be built, and can the company continue to thrive? I think there is one more Jack Ryan novel coming out, but I don't think the Tom Clancy brand will hopefully go away. I hope it continues to be a name brand that's put on games and films. Again, someone sadly passed away too soon. So that's the first story of the day. The second story is that the Ted 2 the sequel to the original Ted has been slated for yet another movie for 2015. Another Seth MacFarlane film. He has A Million Ways to Die in the West coming out first, though, in 2014 in the summer, in May, I believe, late May, which is now going up against Maleficent because they switched their dates around, Disney did. But I think it'll be interesting to see if Ted 2 can succeed. I don't know if Mark Wahlberg is signed on as well. I think Mark Wahlberg was a big part of that movie's success. I think not only was it a swearing, drinking, pot-smoking teddy bear, but it was a swearing, drinking, pot-smoking teddy bear standing next to Mark Wahlberg, which was a big selling point. But it'll be really interesting to see if MacFarlane can transition successfully to movies, and he wasn't just a one-hit wonder. And of course, I can see why they would want to make the film, because the first Ted made $550 million worldwide on obviously not a huge budget. So that's incredibly impressive and a huge win for, I believe, Universal. That's great news. Okay, so the third story I wanted to cover today was one of you asked me to talk about the Chronicles of Narnia and how the Silver Chair has been greenlit and for development. A Mark Gordon company is taking over. And of course, the franchise started out with Disney, then there were problems and it had to move to Fox. It couldn't have had a bigger and splashier and more successful debut with The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. Tilda Swinton was the star. I thought she was fantastic, and also introduced American audiences to James McAvoy. So the first film was really iconic. I love it. I think it's a great instant classic. But ever since then, I feel not just has the box office gone down in the films, but I feel the quality as well. I had major problems with Prince Caspian when it came out. I felt that the kids were leading armies into battle with little regard for the consequences. I remember saying all these mythical animals and creatures died because of poor leadership from these kids, and the kids don't even care. They're like, oh, I want to go home now. And I'm like, that Minotaur just lost his life for you. Show some respect. But so I really thought, I was like, if you're going to send kids into war, you have to do it right. So I had a big problem with that, and I didn't even actually check out The Voyage of the Dawn Treader because of that. Would I revisit it? I mean, I don't know if I would revisit it. From what I'm seeing of the cast of this, they don't have to bring those kids back. There's an older Prince Caspian, so they can cast a new actor. But I feel with shows like the much more adult Game of Thrones, which is kind of like the Chronicles of Narnia, but, you know, with a lot more nudity, I don't really know if there's an audience for Chronicles of Narnia anymore. It's certainly at the budget it would need to be made at. I mean, maybe a television show could work for Chronicles of Narnia, but yet again, Once Upon a Time might be filling that slot. It's very difficult. You know, you have just, I think there's only a small hardcore audience left here, and I'm not quite sure if it's possible to bring people back. I don't know if I would make this film without Tilda Swinton. I thought she was really crucial to the first film, and I think the other films suffered from her lack of presence in them. So I don't know. I question the Mark Gordon Company's decision to pick this franchise up and to put money into it. I don't think it's a wise investment personally. All right, so those are the 3 stories of the day. A little bit of not a huge excitement today because, you know, Tom Clancy passed away, so sorry about that. But let's answer today's question. This is from R.W. Block, who says, okay, question. I love this new question format. It's much easier for me to scroll through and see your questions. So this R.W. Block writes, Grace, why do you think that hand-drawn animation in movies has almost gone extinct, but it stays successful on TV? Excellent question. All right, well, first of all, I think that you've seen hand-drawn animation not succeed at the box office. As I remarked in my review for the Frozen trailer, Princess and the Frog just wasn't the box office success that Disney had wanted it to be. However, I would counter the quality wasn't quite there. It wasn't a Beauty and the Beast. It wasn't a Little Mermaid. It wasn't an Aladdin. I don't even think it was a Pocahontas or Tarzan. And I really like those films. As I just said the other day, I love Tarzan. But I think The Princess and the Frog, I think it was a mistake to make them a frog for so long. And Princess and the Frog did play a little bit like an animated direct-to-TV or direct-to-video movie, which I know it was originally intended to be. Even though I quite liked it, I just feel it had a lot of things working against it. So I think it's a mistake to judge how well hand-drawn animation can do at the box office by that film. That said, people are making so much money with computer animation in theaters that I think studios are unwilling to take the time and the investment in hand-drawn animation to compete in the same arena. It's unfortunate. These companies have really deep pockets, particularly Disney. I think it's worth a roll of the dice, and I think it's frustrating. But why you're seeing it on television is because it's cheaper. They have animation studios that are usually in Asia, and they're able to turn around these animated episodes very quickly. And of course, as I'm sure you've noticed, the bar for quality is much lower on television. I mean, if you were to blow those episodes up on the big screen, I think that you would see a lot of problems, a lot of lack of detail. And so they're faster and cheaper to make because of the lack of detail. Although I have heard some of you complaining about the new Legend of Korra animation for Book 2 is not up to par with Book 1. And that's a really well hand-drawn animated show that I really admire because they have to animate martial arts fights, and they do it quite well. So that's what I think is going on. I think it's a money issue, and I also think it's what the marketplace is hungry for. And as we all know, Hollywood is very risk-averse. But we're talking about other countries trying to get in on the Hollywood game. I just did a trailer review for Jackie Chan's new movie. So Akira, of course, is one of the most fantastic anime films of all time. It's very adult, and that's hand-drawn animation. So maybe we'll have another country roll the dice, do an adult animated film that's hand-drawn, and win big at the box office. That would be phenomenal. And once Hollywood sees that, they'll get back in. Somebody has to take the risk. Someone has to, cast the first stone, push over the first domino, and once they have success, everyone else will come rushing in. So we're just kind of waiting for the next visionary to come around. We don't have Disney anymore. Miyazaki is retiring, but his films don't play well here at the box office anyway. But we really need someone to come on board, and I wonder who it's going to be. Maybe it will be one of you. So that's today's morning movie news. Thank you for tuning in, and I hope you'll check out these other episodes right now.